Okay, you may have noticed that almost every Reason instrument, except the red drum computer, has these two knobs present. One is our pitch bend, which your Midi keyboard should have on it, and we can see that if we move the pitch bend knob on the keyboard, it pretty reliably mimics the movement on the screen. Same with the mod wheel. Now, the tricky thing is, what these two knobs alter in each instrument is different, and it's entirely dependent on the way we have these things configured. Now, the way to look at this, every pitch bend has a box above it which dictates the range, and this basically just means how many semitones, that's how many notes difference am I going to be able to achieve at the maximum pitch bend. So, for example, if I were to choose 12, I can play a note, and then I can bend it up a full octave and down one full octave. If I were to choose only one, which you might want to do for something like a trumpet or maybe a guitar, I have a very limited range. I can only move within one semitone. So I can get a little bit of an accuracy, but I can't get any drastic effects out of it. The mod wheel, on the other hand, almost always has a separate set of controls to dictate what the mod wheel changes. And the way to read it is this. The mod wheel at 0 is not going to affect anything within this range, within this box. At its fullest, it's going to set the frequency up by 8 points. It's not going to affect the filter res. It's going to set the LFO up by 63 points, the phase down by 46 points, and the FM mod wheel, which is this one right here, up by 26 points. I'm sorry, down by 26 points. So, what that basically means is that all of those effects are going to come into play whenever we adjust the mod wheel, and they will scale to the distance that we move the mod wheel. Let's listen to it. So even for all those changes, it still remains a pretty subtle effect. To get a very drastic effect, we could perhaps change the filter resonance, crank that all the way up, and then we should hear some difference. A little bit. We get a bit of resonance out of that. It wasn't too drastic. So, that's how to look at your mod wheel. And the mod wheel also exists within the Dr. Rex, and like I said, every other instrument. Depending on the instrument, you're going to have a different set of controls. In this case, we can adjust the filter frequency based on the mod wheel. We can alter the filter resonance and also the filter envelope decay. Now, I don't have enough time to explain the envelopes yet, so either search for a different tutorial on envelopes or stay tuned, and maybe I'll have one in the near future. So, let's look at some of the things that we can do with our MIDI controller. If you have a MIDI controller which has any kind of knobs or faders, it's a very good thing. We're going to play around with our Dr. Rex for this portion. And Dr. Rex we're going to put into preview mode, which is going to let us hear what the track is going to sound like at the correct tempo, but without actually playing anything. So, this is what we'd like to do. Let's first find a parameter that we'd like to play with. For example, we're going to put this filter into low pass mode. I'm going to put it right about center. And if I have this LFO turned all the way up, which stands for low frequency oscillator, we can hear that it kind of scrambles up our filter frequency back and forth. Perhaps this is not a good example. If I change it to the oscillator, we'll hear that it changes the pitch up and down at a very slow interval. But you know what? Even that's kind of hard to hear. So I apologize for that. I wish I had a better track here or a way to describe what an LFO does, because every instrument within Reason has one. Maybe we should go back to our subtractor to just get a basic LFO course. So I'm playing this right now. what I'm setting right here is for my LFO using this particular shape, which means up and then down and then up and then down over the course of time. I want it to affect both my oscillators 1 and 2, and that's going to affect the pitch. Let's listen to it. It's at a speed of 41, which is a bit hard to understand. I'm not sure if it actually means 41 hertz or if it has some strange arbitrary meaning within reason. It goes up to 127, which lends me to believe that it's just a it just follows the Midi standard for 1 to 27 as a value. However, it's internally decoded by some type of algorithm here which decides how fast it is. So you'll have to listen to it to determine how fast it is. But let's change the effect here and you'll hear what I'm talking about. That's with nothing. And when I crank it up, you hear that it affects my pitch pretty drastically, and it affects it in this up and down motion. If I change it to this sawtooth, you'll hear that it'll descend. Let's hear it. And this one likewise will be the opposite. So you can choose your effect to get the most out of each LFO. Now in Dr. Rex we're going to use our LFO here to change our filter, and we're going to do it using this square wave, which is basically an off and on setting. Now, this has the unfortunate effect of making my drum track basically inaudible for half of the time and audible for the other half. Now we can play around with that. If I use a notch, that's going to make it a bit easier to determine when this is playing and when it isn't. Now what I wanted to do, what we should be doing here to make the most of our MIDI keyboard. Okay, this is important. Almost every key or every knob, every fader that you see here can be controlled with your MIDI keyboard. And the way to do it is this. I would like to change this filter frequency. So what I'm going to do is right click on that knob or fader. There's a button here which says Edit Remote Override Mapping. Now it's going to come up with a little MIDI dialog box which is going to ask you to choose your MIDI keyboard if you have more than one set up. And there's a button down here which says Learn from Control Surface Input. This is fantastic. If you have it selected, all I have to do is move a knob. And whenever I touch that knob, this thing reads the signal. So I've just moved knob 1. I could move knob 2 and we should see it update. Knob 3, 4. All I have to do is touch, manipulate the knob on my keyboard. And now that I've done that, effectively my filter is now bound to that knob. So let's listen to it. So you're saying, that's all well and good. I'm that far in the game, I know what to do now. So how do I actually use that to construct a song? Well, let's say that we're gonna record right now. And I'm going to, at this point, start manipulating my knob. Now, all that obnoxious noise that we just heard is a result of us, I forgot to reset my LFO on my subtractor, so that was not the sound I was looking for. But here we go again. Let's keep playing here. I'm going to continue manipulating the knob on my Dr. Rex, and we should see up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And it will, as you see, it will track the movement of my knob. In fact, not only will it track it, but it will also quantize based on my quantization settings. If I were to uncheck this box, we should be able to get a very smooth curve out of it, depending on how fast I move that knob. That looks pretty smooth. So anyway, this is just a basic way for us to get started in manipulating the basic settings which will govern how our instruments sound. Now this also applies to our mixer. We can do the same type of thing. If I want to control this with knob 1,